pretty right because it's
yes, but
rife.
not with partners though. I don't feel like you want to get in business with a partner. I mean, think about this. He shares a family bloodline with the person that he's robbing.
Yeah,
I'm nothing to him.
that's true, and that is infallible logic.
So how can I even? For me, my girl, right? She's my partner.
Yeah.
I couldn't focus if I had to come do this interview with you, and I know she's out somewhere. Now I have to think about what she's doing. It's taking away from me.
Yeah.
So if I'm breaking bread with a man and I'm doing business with him, I can't sit around wasting my time thinking about what he's doing.
And you're completely right, and I totally understand that. But as a honest individual, I have to sit here and be honest and analyze myself and analyze my own romantic relationships. Am I completely faithful in the traditional sense? No. Why is that? It's a good question. I can't say exactly why that is, but I think that probably the biggest decline in the Western world I have to accept, even though I partake in it and even though I am guilty of it. I think the biggest failing of the Western world is that men and women do not stick together anymore. I think it would fix a lot of problems.
I find that very fascinating that that's the problem. You teach men to be better men and to fix their problems. Don't run away from it. But you know that monogamy is a challenge for you, but you don't want to...
It's not a challenge. Monogamy is not a challenge for me. Monogamy is a decision that every man must make. But for you to make that decision, you have to sit down and decide that, this woman is worth me being monogamous to, which is fine. I think the biggest struggle that men have in the Western world today is finding a woman who they believe is worth being monogamous to. I don't think men have a problem with monogamy as much as men have a problem finding a woman who they truly believe they should be monogamous to. Also, that's something that's interesting about monogamy because we can talk about this and it can be a very interesting conversation. In days of old, high-value men, important men, kings, warriors, whatever, had multiple wives. And they had to look after the multiple wives, or they had mistresses, and they had children with them all, and they had to look after them all. In certain cultures today, that is still the case. In certain religions today, that is still the case. In the Christian world, in the Western world, we have said that's unacceptable. We should be monogamous.
Yeah.
But then you have the majority of men who are monogamous are cheating. The ones who are not cheating are using prostitutes sometimes, or going to strip clubs sometimes, or consuming pornography. So they're not truly, actually loyal. So you've moved the idea of a man having 3 or 4 women he loves and taking care of to a man having one woman he's supposed to love and doing a whole bunch of things in secret. You've just subsidized monogamy and you've removed it all towards pornography and degeneracy. So then you have to sit and argue, well, why does so much degeneracy happen in the West? Is it because we are not allowing men to be more true to their instincts? This is all brand new thoughts for me, and I'm just speaking as I think. But let's look at another example, right?
Well, can I tap in with that? So what's your example, right? So I have an example, Christ. He gives me his way, and I kind of follow it. If I had to follow men and their needs, I'd be burned up tomorrow.
And I don't think it's needs. I don't think men cheat because of needs.
Well, okay. Women cheat because of like feelings. They get an emotional attachment to them. Men cheat because of more lustful body type thing. I've never heard of a man being like, man, I can't wait to talk to Becky.
Of course, but I think a lot of it's also ego.
Exactly. So, but ego, what comes before ego? Or it comes after ego?
Yeah, a fall.
Yeah. So my thing is, yes, when I met here's my theory. When I was out about and I was having fun, as a Christian man, I was waiting for the right woman. And I came to this guy and he goes, I don't understand. I thought you were Christian. And I go, listen, bro, I'll be a good Christian man to a good Christian woman. When I find somebody who has good morals and I know that she'll have my back and she'll do good, and when God presents me that girl, I will be a good man to her. And he asked me something that changed my life forever. He goes, well, if you're the son of God and you're asking for his daughter, why would that father ever give you a daughter when you treat everybody else like garbage? And so I had to think. I think when it comes to blessings, I believe that it's given from God. And to move on to new blessings, you have to handle what you've been given.
Agreed.
So if I've been given the fame and the money and the access to women, God's monitoring me. Okay, are you going to go fool around, act like trash?
Can you be trusted?
Could you be trusted with this daughter that I have over here? Kind of like that picture where Jesus is holding a beautiful bear behind him, and then you're holding on to this lifestyle that you still want, but you're like, this is great. And God's like, no, give it to me. Show me you're ready for it, and then I'll present it, like any good father would be.
Yes, absolutely.
And I did. I cleaned up my act. I was celibate. And I was showing him, I'm trying now to be ready. And then I found a beautiful girl, and then I became monogamous. And then I have a good partnership. And here's the thing. I could lead that relationship anywhere I want. If I wanted to be opened, it could be there. Not saying that she's comfortable with it, but when it first started, I could plant the seeds into taking it in any direction that I want.
Correct.
It takes somebody with integrity to lead a woman in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I tell people all the time, I'm in charge of the relationship. God is in charge of everything.
Yeah.
So when my girl looks at me to lead the house, I got to lead the house, but it's not from my needs.
Yeah.
Because if it was my needs, bro, she's out shit cold. That like she's not gonna get the best out of it.
Of course.
But now I have a God looking at me and monitoring it. You gotta love her like you love my church.
No, absolutely. Everything you're saying is completely true, and I agree with you. There's two ways we can answer the question. We can talk about it from a religious perspective and what you just described, and you're right, being a God-fearing man is going to lead a woman in the correct direction because a woman is a reflection of her man, and that's why you see if a woman gets with a bad guy who does drugs, she ends up doing drugs and doing bad things, and a man can lead her in the wrong direction.
She comes from our ribs, metaphorically and physically and mentally, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna be, like you're saying, doing drugs, she's gonna follow my lead.
Absolutely. But I'm just talking about it from a societal perspective. I'm making an overall societal observation, the fact that now we have monogamous societies, but because they're not truly monogamous, all of the desire is being outsourced towards degeneracy, as opposed to having a society where a man is allowed more than one wife, for example, and then the degeneracy isn't needed. You don't need pornography and you don't need prostitution if you're allowed to have 2, 3, 4 wives if you're successful. And the point I was going to make earlier is that in certain countries, this is still the case. And I'm just speaking here in generalities. I don't have proof for any of this, but if you look at Russia, right? Russia is a Christian nation. There's a lot of Muslims as well, but it's traditionally a Christian nation. But if you're a very rich, powerful Russian man, and I've been to Moscow, I can assure you, you have maybe 4 or 5 wives. Well, not wives, 4 or 5 girls.
Yeah.
And your wife understands about who the other girls are, and she doesn't really care. Don't look, don't care, don't ask. I have a Bentley, I have a big house, I have the children. He plays around with these other girls sometimes. I don't care, I'm his wife, and that's just how things are set up. That particular man who's very, very rich, he's not interested in pornography, he's not interested in prostitutes, he's satisfied, he has enough for whatever his ego desires or his heart desires. Then you look at the West, and you look at the most degenerate things which can possibly happen, which are actually levels above prostitution and pornography. If you look at Epstein's Island, for example, when you have very rich, powerful men and they're told by the public sphere, you're not allowed to have more than one woman, but they don't have God to control them. They're godless. Then they say, okay, well, how can I satisfy myself if God's not restricting me? The society's saying I can only have one woman. I'm not allowed to have 4 or 5, which would satisfy me in some regard for my ego or unhealthy reason or whatever my reason is. So I'm going to end up doing things in private. I'm going to end up doing things in secret. And then you have Epstein's Island appear. So it's kind of interesting. God is important, and God is extremely required to restrict people. But if you take the God out of the element and you only use society to try and restrict the sexual desires of people and tell them they have to be monogamous, you're going to end up with more degeneracy than if men were allowed to be polyamorous and have more than one wife. Does that make sense?
100%. And the reason why I asked you, is this generation more evil than the last? And I wanted to circle back how you said the West is falling apart.
Yeah.
I believe that it's kind of, and I always go back to biblical references, not because I'm an annoying Christian, but I just like truth. And I notice that truth comes out of these testimonies that I see.
Yep.
And the one thing that I've realized with humanity, God or no God, it's your access.
Yep.
And I think that's why God reflects the heart. He doesn't reflect your actions. He reflects your heart. Because let me give you an example, pornography. I don't watch porn.
Me neither.
The reason why I don't watch porn is, one,